Good afternoon, frequent flyers. Welcome to today's episode of The Lounge. Today I have Tammy with me, and we are going to be talking about the art of perseverance. Now, Tammy Barlette is the founder of Athena's Voice, and she's a mindset performance coach for Aviators. And she focuses on a very important aspect of success that often goes overlooked: perseverance. This is an important skill set for change, success, and making it through the tough times that inevitably occur. Remember, we always get a little bit of turbulence no matter where we're flying to. Today, we're going to cover being willing to face challenges that following our dreams bring, what a mission-focused mindset is, and the ups and downs of being a woman in a male-dominated field. Tammy's been a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot and retired in 2018 as a lieutenant colonel. She's been a speaker referral business for featuring female military pilots around the United States, and she served in the U.S. Air Force for over 20 years flying multiple aircraft. Tammy, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first met, I think we actually met through LinkedIn because we had mutual connections. It was shortly after Women in Aviation. And, I saw your profile and the fact that you are speaking and in this space after a great career flying in the Air Force, which is something that was a dream of mine as well. And we had some mutual fighter pilot female friends. So it was a natural fit. And we reached out and connected, and we just aligned with so many things. And, we looked at the mission-focused mindset. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and why this is something that you talk about so frequently?
Well, with a mission-focused mindset, I think what I want to just share with the world is that, like you already said it, is that things get tough.
Mhm.
And sometimes when things get really tough, we tend to get sucked into the problem itself.
Yes.
And although the problem does need to be addressed and you need to pay attention to it, you have to remember to keep the big picture in mind. And so what I like to talk about is how do you do that? Because I can tell you all day that, hey, don't get sucked into the problem, but until you have techniques and ways to get out of it, it's not really very helpful to you.
Right.
So I highlight three, there's more than three ways, but the three biggest ways that I think you can keep a mission-focused mindset is, first of all, preparation. I mean, you need to be prepared. When you're more prepared, and that includes contingencies, things that could potentially go wrong, because they will go wrong. And even if the thing you prepare for that might go wrong doesn't go wrong, when something else goes wrong, mentally, you are in a better place to address any problem that comes your way. So that in itself will help you persevere through things. The second thing I talk about is the enemies within. So we all have enemies inside of us, and whether it's, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, just emotions of a failure that you're dealing with, we have to process them. And how do you do that? I talk about that a lot, and then leaning on people that to help you get through those. But the last thing I think is really, really important is getting in the zone. That's kind of focusing on the objective. Once you decide you want to achieve something and you set yourself down the path and it gets more challenging than you expected, assuming nothing major has changed, instead of starting to consider quitting or what quitting would look like, or what you need to dig down and just acknowledge the thoughts that are coming in about quitting or whatever it is, and dismiss, acknowledge, dismiss. And you need to just dig deep and just press forward, because you only have so much thought energy. And if you start using it up, thinking about quitting and what you could do instead, you might create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I just think people just need to keep their head down and then drive forward at that goal once they decide they want it, even when it gets super hard.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think would be a great way for people who have lofty goals, for them to start understanding what exactly those goals will bring? Because whenever we follow our dreams, especially if we have the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals, it's going to be tough. There's going to be people who tell us we can't. There's going to be people who intentionally try to trip us, and we're going to be up against a set of circumstances that we've never encountered before. So what would you advise them in that process of preparing, of going after this goal? What are some of the things that they can do?
Well, the first and most important thing they need to do is make sure that goal is in alignment with their personal core values. And if you don't know your own personal core values, there's plenty of books out there to help you figure that out.
Yes.
But if it's not in alignment with your personal core values, it's going to be really hard to get to that big, hairy, audacious goal, as you called it. So I
Yes.
think that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is acknowledging that it's going to get harder than anything you imagined. That way you're ready for those things. And so part of that process for me and what I share with other people is that you need to get your thoughts right. You
Mm,
need to be aware of what you're telling yourself. And if you're telling yourself somewhere inside of your head you can't, and you're listening to those naysayers, then you probably won't.
right.
So and it's a conscious thing. Like you're going to get the can't thoughts, but you have to start fighting them and replacing them and working hard to go, I can, I can, I can. And you need to start seeing yourself in that place. Now, the last thing I would say is if it's a big goal, look at that. Like I say, you see the top of the mountain, you're like, I want to do that. But if you look at that big mountain and go, oh my gosh, how am I going to get up there? You might just stop in your tracks right there. Go,
Right.
I want to do that. And I'm going to break it down into small steps. A lot of people talk about this, but it's simply just saying, okay, now I'm going to walk to that rock. Next time I'm going to walk to that tree. And, every once in a while do a check where you pause and you look backwards and you go, whoa, look at where I've come.
Yeah.
And that's another motivator to keep you going again. So I think it's really important that, you look at the big goal, but then you break that down into bite-sized steps to press you on to move forward.
Absolutely. Because when we break it down into bite-sized steps, I mean, it becomes a lot more easy, right? We're not so overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I often tell people is you can say, just for today, I will be courageous. Tomorrow I can lose my shit, but today I'm going to be courageous, right? I'm going to face my fears. And by doing that, you're not committing to this new identity of forever. This is just an action that I can get through, and it's not, overwhelming. And, I always use the analogy of food. Things that taste good, we sometimes want to eat more of it or eat it really fast. But even the best, most decadent dessert that you absolutely, love having, if you bite off too much, you might choke on it, right? And then that will put a bad taste in your mouth. And you're going to remember that and think, oh, actually, I don't know if I want that dessert anymore. So it's remembering to go slow and savor that process, right? Not just inhale it so that you don't process as things are taking place, but enjoy that learning and that exploration.
I mean, I think, and two, one good example too is a lot of us have a ton of pictures on our phone, right? And what are we going to do with all this? Like, so we just keep letting them build and build and build, and now you have thousands of them. But if you just say, okay, every day I'm going to go in, I'm going to delete 5. Over time, that's gonna work. But you have to start somewhere. You have to, if you set a goal of 5, if I tell you, can you go delete 5 pictures? You'd be like, yeah, I could do that. But if I tell you go clean up your phone, you'd be like, not today.
Goodbye. That's going to stay in the other room for now. Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. And I think I love the mountain analogy used as well, because sometimes we climb the mountain and we get to that peak only to look up and go, oh my gosh, there's another one. Right. And then sometimes we even see people coming down and they maybe don't look so happy, or maybe they're sick or they're being rushed down and, they're hurt. And we're going, whoa, wait a second. Do I really want this? But I think that's a healthy reaction to check yourself. Like you said, one, look back. Wow, look at all the things you've done. You've already gone in elevation 10,000 meters. Wonderful. Just because there's another 5,000 to go doesn't mean you failed or that you didn't do it. It just means there's another part of the journey.
Right. Exactly. When people would come to pilot training, a lot of the students, one of the things I would do is I'd draw a triangle on the board.
Yeah.
And I would ask them, I would say, hey, where are you when it comes to the pyramid of pilots in the Air Force? And they literally haven't even started academics yet. And they would look at me and they go, on the bottom, below it. And so I'd draw these X's on there. And then what they didn't realize is I put the triangle at the top of the board. Okay. And so then I'd say, okay, that's great. You're right. You are at the bottom. But then I would make this huge triangle, I extend it. And so now their X's are way at the top. And I would say, but on those days that suck, on those days that you think you can't do this anymore, I want you to remember this picture right here, because it took you a lot of hard work to get where you are. And you need to remember that. You need to remember all the work you put in and not just put yourself at the bottom and say, I'm not worth anything. Like grab on to the accomplishments that you've already had. I mean, to get to pilot training alone is a huge accomplishment. So.
Oh, absolutely. So celebrating the wins is what I'm hearing. And that is a very powerful practice. And it is a practice. It's something that you need to build up as a skill set. Some of us, it's not innate, or maybe we were taught, don't brag, be humble. And there's all these kind of like phrases we grew up in our culture, or however our parents or the people around us were. And at the same time, when you celebrate the wins, you're positively reinforcing the behavior, releasing dopamine. I mean, we can get
Yeah,
into all of that, but it's important to recognize what you've already accomplished.
it is. It is. It's kind of some fuel, And I think one thing I think too, while you're in a struggle, we don't typically go, well, look what I did, or look what and I think that's good because you don't want your ego to get in the way.
Right.
So once you get through it, then you can go, look, wow, I can be proud of myself, but if you think you're something great for being in the struggle, then that's not very helpful to you.
No, I mean, and there are people who do that, right? There's definitely a period where the badge of busyness was like a badge of honor. I mean, I'll own that, that happened with me. And it was like, I felt important because I was busy, but a lot of this busy work was nonsense. Like it wasn't necessary. Right? And so, just owning that. So what would you like advise your clients on? And for anybody listening, if they're starting to maybe attach to that identity of, oh, I'm the one who overcomes everything because I'm strong, or this, how can they step away from that identity and just continue to use it as a learning experience rather than letting that get in the way?
What can you letting it get in the way? How can you give me an example? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, so the ego part of it, right? So because if they're going to if I'm attaching to the identity of I'm significant when I'm busy, that means I will find ways to make myself busy, even if it's not necessary or in alignment with my goal. Or if I find significance in being right or in being on the top, I might start to disregard others in that
Mhm.
pursuit, that quest for success. So how
Yeah.
would you advise people to temper that?
I think it's really important that we relate with others that are in the struggle with us. So, when you're in some challenges, so let's go back to the pilot training example.
Yeah.
You know, don't go through pilot training or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish thinking, look at me, I'm so awesome, I can do anything. And yes, maybe you can do anything, and I do believe that, but you have to look around at other people and see their struggles, so when you hit your struggle point, that you have something to go, okay, this is normal. Because if you live in that place where you think you can get through anything easily, and I think that's probably the key word there, is that
Right.
I can do this and I can do it on my own easily, that's going to be harmful. And I really think that the key to a lot of that is humility, and humility amongst those that you're interfacing with within your arena. Understanding that we all have different struggles, and I'm going to have a struggle at some point. So let me not get too egotistical right now. Like, let's say I'm really great at formation, but I suck at instruments, and that's just two different. I know if you're not a pilot, it's irrelevant what it really is, but it's just a different category. I might be great at one, but I'm not at the other. So I get to the other, now I suck, and I'm like, what the heck? So that humility, inside your arena, I think is really important.
I think what you're touching on here too is beginner's mindset, right? Allowing yourself to learn from other people around you. Because as you said, you might be the best at this one skill set in the room, maybe even in the whole company. And yet you are not the best at all things. So you are the best, and then you are also maybe the worst or somewhere in the middle on other skills. And
Yeah.
there's somebody else in that room that is better than you at that particular skill. So just because you have this one high bar over here doesn't go, it's not everything. And leveraging that, it's important that we don't think that we can do everything without help, because if we can start to leverage, oh, hey, that person is excellent at formation, or that person
Mhm.
is excellent at this drill, then you can
Mhm.
go and seek out their support, have them be an advocate for you, and have them even maybe be a mentor.
Yeah, I think it's really important. That reminds me of when I was probably, a young lieutenant captain in a flying squadron. I felt a lot of times, and this kind of gets into the being in the male dominated career field aspect you wanted to talk about, but I would oftentimes feel like I was the stupidest one, or like, why can't I get this? And that's just the truth of it.
Yeah.
And I realized as time went on, first of all, I knew more than I thought I knew. Um, but I typically, wore my knowledge on my, I would carry it around, everybody could see it. Like, I'd be like, yeah, I know everything about that, or be like, I don't know anything about that. Whereas I found a lot of my squadron mates would only highlight the things that they knew about. So then
Mm,
that was the only thing they were talking about. And until I recognized that, every time they talked, they were talking with authority. And I know this and I understand this and I can teach this and I thought, wow, they know everything and I know nothing.
right,
Until suddenly I was like, oh, they only talk about that thing because that's the thing they're really good at. Whereas I was more willing to be like, hey, I don't get this. Will you tell me? Because I need to know. It's not safe that I don't understand all this how I should.
right,
But then you get those people around you who are sometimes looking at you and go, I can't believe you don't know that. Because it happens to be what's easy for them. And we all need to remember, just like you just said, is we all have different strengths. Like I might be good with A, B, and not C. And somebody else is good with C. And if they judge me because I'm not good at this C, then it doesn't work for the whole organization. But we all have those different strengths. And I think we fail to remember that with these little comments like, I can't believe you didn't know, or can't believe you did this.
right.
That hinders us from wanting to ask those questions. Because I really wanted to ask those questions. Whenever I didn't know something, I was like, but sometimes I would be like, oh, I better not ask.
Right.
Which is
Right.
terrible. Terrible.
And we all go through that. And we were talking before we went live about, especially depending as we grow up, our age groups from adolescence into teenage years into adult years. And it really depends on the culture of the organization that you're in, the culture of, the um, Naval Academy will be different than the Air Force Academy, et cetera, between
Mhm.
pilot training and infantrymen. It's going to all be
Mhm.
different. And same thing in the corporate space, if you will, right? In the civilian world. And it's that whole adage of if you ask a fish to climb a tree and it fails and you tell it it's bad, right? Why are we asking the fish to climb a tree? That's not what it was built to do. That's not what it was designed for. Let's have it swim instead and be the best at that. And we got to put people in the right arenas.
Yeah.
People don't belong in boxes, but we should be putting them in an arena that they can really shine in.
Mhm. Yeah, we all definitely have different strengths, and it's important to find those and know that.
Yeah. Now we're talking about leveraging your strengths, really building those things, right? Owning that, and it becomes almost like a superpower. So I have to ask you, what is your superpower?
Yeah, this is probably not one you've gotten before, but my superpower is forgiveness.
Mm,
And I think it ties into empathy just because
yeah,
my natural state is to put myself in someone else's shoes, which is not everyone's natural place. In fact, I get questioned sometimes, why do I do that? I'm
right.
like, well, I just do it and I naturally do it. My husband actually said to me once when we were talking about like movies where people, they're in a fight and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't watch this. And he's like, you're a freaking fighter pilot. You can't watch this. And I'm like, I just I can't imagine feeling like that. And he goes, well, why are you putting yourself in their shoes? Why don't you put yourself in the perpetrator? I'm like, I wouldn't be the perpetrator either.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do? Like, I just naturally put myself there. And that applies to everything that I do. So, when I was instructing, I loved instructing because I really cared about figuring out where are they coming from? What is their experience? What is the hurdle that they're having? And I would say, forgiveness is a piece of it just because, people hurt you. I think it's a superpower to be able to get over that and not just verbalize it and say, I forgive you, but actually mean it because I take time to go, what were they thinking? Did they mean to do that? Did they, whether it's a student in the seat making a mistake or it's someone who hurt me, it's just, I think it's important and it matters. So.
Absolutely. No, that's a beautiful one. And a lot of times people don't let go, right? And so justice becomes their theme, and they want to then overcome this thing or be better than. And it's really just about understanding, and I think applying that lens of curiosity, not only is it the balm to a lot of things, but it can help you in building emotional intelligence and understanding, where things come from. A child doesn't like boundaries because they want to eat ice cream all the time, or they want to just run into the street and chase their ball. They don't realize that that boundary is to protect them, to keep them safe, right?
Right.
Then when they're older, of course, we can use our adult minds, but we still have those unconscious behaviors under the surface. So it's important to unpack all of that.
Yeah. When it comes to the whole forgiveness thing, I think that sometimes, when someone hurts me, I go to the, intent, because this happens in business, it happens in your families, it happens with your friends. Like, what was their intent? And do we always know? No, we don't always know, but I think that matters. And the second question I always ask is, how am I being selfish? Because usually a lot of times the negative feelings I'm experiencing are because I felt like I looked dumb, or I didn't get what I needed somehow. Like, if you can really analyze it deeply in a way that's selfish, you'll usually find at least one thread that comes from inside of you, at least one. And I almost always can. And I think that's helpful to the relationship as well.
Absolutely. And I love that because it's taking ownership, right? Nobody makes us feel a certain way. We choose how we think and feel. And they're often derived from our childhood experiences and, creating that safety for ourselves. But by asking this question, it's really taking a good look in the mirror and owning your own experience and then being able to choose differently afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still fight this constantly, but as you're growing up, you have your little world, and your world gets bigger and bigger as you grow older. But you kind of your mind just assumes that everybody grew up like you did or
Right.
experienced what you did, which we know intellectually is not true, but we don't, a lot of times we don't know what the other options are. So
Yes.
even as I get older, I'm like, oh, I have to remember that they might not have experienced that, whether it's how you celebrate Christmas, or you have to, like, remember everybody has their own experiences in this world, and how we react to them, that matters.
Absolutely. And the experience that you've had, obviously, I know in a lot of your keynotes, you speak about, that mission focused mindset and some of the challenges that you faced in being a woman in the male dominated space and how that mission mindset helped you so that you could continue to follow your dreams.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit more about your experience there and what you would like to say to young women who are surrounded by men in their fields and might be facing some of the similar kind of scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest help to me was just had to do with mindset. And I went into this business or this career field not because I was trying to prove anything. I did it because I just wanted to do it. And so I went down this path. And I remember specifically showing up my first fighter squadron. And there was a lot of things that were like, oh, okay, you guys do that, that's fine, just as long as I don't need to do that, whether it's singing goofy songs, or, I mean, there, or, I got, whatever your call sign is or whatever it is. I just decided that I actually let some things kind of land and just be, instead of
Mhm.
fighting it, because I entered the community, even though it was 10 years after the first female was selected to fly a fighter jet, still looking back very early on. And I wasn't there to rock their world and change anything. I was early enough at a point where I was still kind of showing, hey, we can do this. You can trust me. I can do my job. I'm not here to, make you all put pink pencils in your flight suit or whatever. That's a
Right.
crazy example, but I just wanted to show them I could do the job. So it's just in the proving stage. And then slowly over time, as I gained, and many other women gained credibility, things changed. Things got better because, people just saw it. I did a post months back, but it's really, you can't, if you say, hey, I want to go over there, you can't just go, whoop, here we go. Like, most of that energy and momentum is going this direction. So to shift it, it takes time. You have to kind of slowly, like that. The big part is making the decision going that way. But now we need to accept that it's going to take time, and not get mad when things don't change overnight. Like, yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of an injustice, but let's just work with it here. Let's just keep going forward and keep shifting things slowly. And I think that is a huge important thing that people need to remember.
Yeah.
That decision to make the change doesn't mean the culture of it's going to change immediately. It
Right.
takes time. You have to, get that credibility built up, and it's okay.
I love that how you finished that. It's okay. Because so many people beat themselves up because they didn't know how to do it the first time. And I mean, we don't begrudge children who don't know how to walk and be like, oh my God, you can't walk already? Like, you're 6 months old. What's wrong with you? Right. We
Yeah.
understand that there's a process of the growth and learning. And then kind of after high school or after university, kind of the formal, training years, A lot of times we stop learning in different ways, or we think that the first time we do something, we need to be the best at it. And so a lot of us tend to do only things that we're very good at. We
Yeah.
kind of ignore the rest. Nobody likes to suck at a sport or at some activity. But if it is really something that you want to do and you actually enjoy it, even though you're not great at it, the only way to get great is to keep practicing.
That is absolutely true. And one thing I wanted to point out, I think this is important because you meant what would I say to women who are in the situation right now,
Yes.
or anybody who is a minority in a
Yes.
majority, I would say is just to remember that pick your battles, just like people talk about that in parenting too. Pick your battles. Don't try and fight everything right now. And then on the backside of it, don't look back and go, oh my gosh, I should have done A, B, and C. Like there's a time and a place to do everything. Because a lot of us female fighter pilots look back and said, I should have done more. But instead of beating ourselves up, we did the best we could in the moment. And now is the time to fight the newer battles, the different battles that are, whether, now we're starting to fight the equipment battle. Like the equipment that we were wearing didn't fit. I literally went and flew with an exposure suit that I would have died in because I just wanted to go fly and they didn't have one that fit me. So I went anyways because I didn't want to be that person who wasn't flying because you don't have the equipment to fit me. They're fixing that stuff now, but that wasn't a battle I wanted to fight at the time. And I could look back and beat myself up, or I can go, you know what? I made a difference and someone else built on that. You can't do everything.
I love that. And another example of that, speaking of, equipment for women is, I was at this analog astronaut conference and one of these NASA engineers, she's designed a suit for women to be able to go to the bathroom, because traditional flight suits, any woman who's ever worn a jumpsuit, what happens when you go to the bathroom? You're like half naked in the stall and your clothes are on the floor. And you're trying to make sure it doesn't touch, right? And it's really awkward. And I mean, you can't even imagine being in, the type of flight situations ladies that are fighter pilots or astronauts are in. And, she goes through the whole presentation and shows, we get a demo, a woman came out wearing it and, they unzipped and, she sat on a chair to demonstrate, hey, this is what it would be like. And then one of the guys raises his hand. He's like, can you make a guy version too? Because we have to go number 2. And she's like, see, it works for everybody.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So, it's really, as you said, picking the battles and understanding that it's not all your fight and finding those allies and advocates around you.
Yeah.
Speaking of allies and advocates, I always ask my guests, who is on your personal board of directors?
Yeah. Well, for sure, my husband. He has been my biggest supporter, since I met him. And he's actually the one that's got me to start the path down to a lot of these challenges. Obviously, I had to accept the challenge and complete it myself, but he is the one that he said, you should, when they asked me to go to weapons school, I thought they were crazy. I'm like, me, weapons school? I don't think so. But he's like, what? He's like, no, you have to go. And he got me, to believe I could. Yeah. And then he put the professional speaking idea in my mind. When he first told me, I think I got a little bit nauseous and thought he was nuts. But I realized that there's a message that needs to be shared, and too many women are quietly going off into the night and not sharing their stories. So then that path we blazed gets grown over. And my whole goal is really just to keep the path me and so many others have taken cleared and a floodlight on it. So women can get to where we got much faster and then go way beyond it. So my husband, back to the questions, my husband. And then it kind of depends on what am I dealing with? Right. I do talk to a mentor of mine, Michael Port, quite regularly about, business stuff. But I think I just jump around at that point, but my husband would be the first one I go to.
Beautiful. I love that. And for anyone who is interested in those spacesuits, we have the website, Charlie Crone just shared it with us, is girlinspaceclub.com. So the link's there, and on LinkedIn, you can go and check it out. These are also suits for analog astronaut missions. If anyone watching is in that arena and would like to have a more friendly suit for their next mission. Okay, so personal board of directors, we've covered the other question of your superpower. So the newest question that I've added to my my list for my guests is, how do you best serve or represent humanity? So where this kind of stems from is, right now we have a lot going on in the space industry, commercialization, becoming a multiplanetary species. What is it about you, if you were to meet an alien race, that you would represent for the humankind?
Oh, wow. Putting it that way is let's see. I think that, how I serve humanity is just I like to help other people see their potential,
Mm.
and we don't need to limit ourselves. So an alien coming here, I could help them like, hey, you can do much bigger things. That's the truth. I think that we all have so much more in us, and so many people have poured into me in ways that make me believe in myself, and I think it matters that we do that. Yeah, we need to be strong and independent and do things on our own sometimes, but we are social beings. We are
Yes.
meant to be connected, and I think it's okay, and I encourage people to lean on people they trust to help them through those times, and even to see your huge potential and
Mm.
how great they really could be. So I just love helping people find that in themselves.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, because you're right. So many of us isolate, and isolation is the worst advisor, because we get those voices in our head and we go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And having, we can all think of that teacher or mentor or parent or aunt as we were growing up that came to us and said just the right thing at the right time. And for them, it might have been no big deal, an offhand
Mhm.
comment or, common sense. But for us, it was absolutely life changing. So you
Yeah.
never know what you're going to say might impact and how much might impact somebody else.
Yeah. That's why I also like to, when I see people doing those things and they don't even realize it, like what coaches and teachers, and I like to take the time to genuinely thank them for what they do,
Mm,
because you don't always see the results of what you're doing, but like, my kids' coaches, I thank them often, because it feels like tiny little things it's nothing. But
right.
them asking my child, how are you doing today? And, care, it matters.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for being here with me today. Before we sign off, where can listeners find out more about you and how can they connect?
Absolutely. The best place is on LinkedIn. So Tammy Barlette. And then if they want to go check out some female pilots, military pilots who are speakers, you can go to athenasvoiceusa.com. That's Athena as in the goddess of wisdom and war. Voice is in like my voice, USA.com. And then there's my website out there too, tammybarlette.com.
Beautiful. And all of that is also in the show notes. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, or in the future, iTunes or Spotify, you'll have those links. So you can simply click and connect with Tammy. Tammy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. We're going to have to schedule another one for sure.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll see you soon.